Hey people, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about the Epic Encounters box set. It is the Hall of the Orc King. This thing is really cool. It's a £50 standalone box set that I picked up from Element Games. I'm going to open it up, show you what you get within the box itself, take a look at the models, prime them, paint them, and give you my review of the box set as it is. Grab yourself a brew, let's get into this one. Hey people, so this one is the Epic Encounters Hall of the Orc King box. I was in the Element Games shop over in Stockport the other day, having a bit of a look around, a bit of a browse round, and managed to find this one in some of the sections that I don't normally look in. So first off, the actual box art caught my eye. This thing looks pretty cool because of that contrast of the bright pink and some of the dark scale stuff we're seeing behind. The actual figures themselves also looked really good. So I'm always been into orcs, but generally I haven't done a load of orc armies from Warhammer. So I was really chuffed to be able to pick something like this up. I think price wise it's pretty good, so it's at the £53.99 mark. I've wanted to showcase some painting and some element of builds on the channel for some time, but I kind of fell out of love with Warhammer because of the pricing and because I've been able to get hold of some bits and pieces over the last couple of years. I've probably been a massive Warhammer fan now for I would say at least 20 odd years, and in all those years I've kind of dabbled in and out of the actual hobby. So this was a bit of an idea of rekindling a bit of love for some painting. I'm gonna unbox this one, we'll open it up, we'll see what it's like inside, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the models, and we're gonna get these primed up. I'm gonna show you how I deal with Zenithal highlighting through brushes, and then I'm probably gonna contrast paint them. I want to be able to complete these. There's 20 models in the box. It's not quickly as in to get through them, but in a way where I'm not going to procrastinate too much and I'm going to actually get the set of it done. And that's going to require a little bit of speed painting on my behalf. And hopefully these are going to be as epic as they look on the box. Okay, so in these ones, you're supposed to be everything that you need to be able to play a bit of a skirmish. The whole sort of idea of the Epic Encounters, I think, comes from a Dungeons and Dragons style campaign. And basically what we have here is an encounter in a box. So it's a bit of a story campaign all on its own, separately, that you can play. Now I haven't got a clue how to play it, is my honest answer. These are the instructions, which look kind of cool, but I always struggle with playing games in relation to like Warhammer or any kind of tabletop games. I tend to not understand the rules, and I tend to need somebody to lead me through actually playing them. I think I've played pretty much 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th edition, playing about 1 or 2 games each. I actually am more of a collector and more of a painter than I am a player at this point. But yeah, it is what it is. It definitely has the option of doing that from the box. You get this nice kind of, I want to say it was like a grid mat system, which you can place your models on, and I think will become part of the skirmish. But the reason why I kind of got these was to use it as a proxy orc army. So I'm more interested in what do the models look like and what is the quality of those models like. So these are packaged in the cardboard box and then into the plastic. It does look like a few of them have dislodged as they've been sort of knocked about, but in general we'll have a look at some of the detail and see what the models are actually like. Okay, so initial impressions straight out of the box, what I'm seeing is that we have got quite a few of the same mould. So each one of these is not actually unique. There are some that are very, well, they're the same basically. I want to say similar, but they're not, they're actually the same. That's okay, and kind of at that price point and at the level of the kit that we've got, I was expecting that. But when we talk about the diversity of the models in between sort of different variations of them, this doesn't look like it has a massive variation of them. So what I'll do is I will put them all out and I'll try and illustrate to you which ones are the same. So each one of these bear riders which I will show you around, is exactly the same model, exactly the same poses for the bear. That's a little bit disappointing, if I'm honest, because it's a really good opportunity to have something a bit different. So the positive with these models are that they're already made up. You don't require any kind of extra sort of modeling experience or gluing. But the negative of them is they are very the same. And that, unfortunately, for me, is a little bit rubbish, because we haven't got that variety within this small little skirmish army that we're going to build. Same for these two big guys at the back. They are very much the same model. Got a bit of a line here where one of them joins on its stomach onto the legs. So that will probably need a bit of filling with green stuff just so we can hide that. But they are effectively duplicates. Then you've got 3 men with spears. These have all got the same spear. That one's slightly bent, which is fine. We'll be able to heat that up and be able to mold that back into position. That kind of happens with some of these. The level of detail that is on this model isn't amazing, if I'm honest, either. It's certainly not to the kind of level that I expect from Games Workshop, and that could be a bit of a deal breaker as to whether I'm going to get some more of these in due course. This one's one of our hero type figures. He's got himself a massive warhammer and just looks like he's got a bit of a crown. He's a bit more majestic. This one's some sort of shaman or something similar. He's got a skull in his hand and generally looks like he's going to be giving some sort of magic powers or something to the group. We've got these 2 berserker type dudes with meat cleavers. They look okay, but again, the same mold there, no variation within it. Very kind of Orc type look from Lord of the Rings. We've got the 3 blokes who are, I shouldn't say blokes, they're orcs, aren't they? But 3 orcs that are bowmen. Again, all the same in relation to the way that they're cast. And then we've got what looks like guys with bombs or hand grenades that are ready to throw them. Again, same sculpt for those. And then the absolutely massive behemoth guys at the back who've got some heavy armor on and massive chain maces. So general opinion from just opening it up, what I would say is quality wise it looks okay. I'm hoping some of these details are going to come out with the contrast paints and some careful highlighting, but in general, when you look at it against the level of detail in both Games Workshop and, for another example, some Ravaged Star stuff, the Ravaged Star, for a start, has got loads more detail within the model and is a lot more unique. There's definitely some doubling up on sculpts with Ravaged Star, but the Games Workshop stuff, even though it is a bit more expensive, is generally that little bit better at conveying some of them details through, and it is a lot more unique and detailed than the models I think we've got here. But let's see what they're like when they're painted. I'm going to base coat them up first. We'll base coat them with an airbrush just to get all that base coat done, and then we'll look at doing the Zenithal highlights with it. Okay, so now that these are primed black, there is a bit more detail coming out of them. I'm a little bit happier with what we've got, and I'm hoping that you can see some of that detail in the light. The only thing I would say is, in general, faces are nowhere near as detailed as you would get with GW models and even some of the other stuff I've seen, but I think there's enough detail to be able to pick out some bits in highlights. So what we're going to do now is Zenithal highlight these models. I'm going to start off by liberally putting on some dark grey. This is an acrylic paint by I think it's Archive X. I can't even pronounce it, but I've used this one before and I've had some really good results on the models from Ravaged Star, which effectively I use contrast paints over the top, and then we're going to finish it off with this acryl bold titanium white. This is really nice as well, and should give us that little bit of a base to do the contrast paints on. So, okay, so from the black miniature, which we base coated before, I basically built up the layers of Zenithal highlights, and this is kind of what you end up with in the end. So as you can see, it's got a little bit of depth to it in the way that it is predominantly white, but with some black elements and some grey elements. And really it's about building up that layer of detail. Now you can kind of do that as quickly as you want. I don't want to profess that I'm some sort of expert at it. I'm not. I've only been doing it for a short period of time, but I actually find it quite an enjoyable and quite therapeutic way to do it. So I use a mixture of different brushes from Artus Opus. So I use the extra large Artus Opus brush to do the majority of the dark grey, and then I use the large D-Series Artus Opus brush to do some of the other bits where we're building it up to white. And I tend to mix it a little bit from the dark grey into the white and then eventually completely white, and just build that up over a period of time. I reckon each of those models has took me about 10 minutes to do. There's obviously loads of them to do, but that is kind of the level that I take it to with the Zenithal highlights, and I won't take it much further. Now, some people might take that a little bit further by putting in some etched bits for the muscles. You could almost do all the fibres of the muscles if you wanted to with a really fine paintbrush. But I think this will look okay, and because we're trying to do that sort of speed painting thing where once we've got them all to this kind of stage, we can just put on the different colours. That is what I suppose I'm most excited to sort of do with it. Now, my plan is to use the AK Quick Gen paints, which I'll just move the camera, but that is this group of paints that I managed to get from Element Games. These were £10.62 in Element Games, and they give me 4 basic colours, which are going to be sort of the base and the majority of the work that's to do with the paint for all these models. So we've got 2 different types of green to help us build up the green skin look. We've got a brown leatherette type look, and we've also got a metallic one. Now, these are contrast paints. They can be thinned down with medium. I'm going to have a look at doing that and see what they look like if we could actually do a test piece. And then we'll work on getting everything kind of uniform and very similar. But very much this kind of design, this kind of colour scheme that we've got for these orcs on the actual box is what I'm going to go for with these. Plenty of metallic parts here to be had in relation to some of the armour they've got, loads of green skin on display. I think it's going to work for it. You know, I kind of want a very grimy, orky kind of effect, a very sort of organic effect. So that should be cool, and it should work out. What I'm going to do is I will get these all done and Zenithal highlighted, and then we'll start looking at applying the contrast paints. We've got all of the miniatures now Zenithal highlighted. They're all done. I've even done a test miniature, which we've used the colours that we've got from AK on, and I'm quite happy that that looks okay. It looks good enough that you could play that on the tabletop without too much issue, but what this effectively does is give us that base that we were talking about. So the brown works really well for some of the leather parts. That mixture of the 2 greens has really given me a bit to work with. It doesn't look that great on the light here through the screen that I'm seeing for the actual video, but I've got 2 sort of tones of green, which is really nice. So I've chosen to use sort of a lighter green as it comes towards these new spikes and bits and pieces at the top, and hopefully I'll show you that on another bit of video. But yeah, quite happy with what we've got in relation to the 4 colours we're going to use to do the base colours. I will basically do the same thing with all the other bits. So now effectively going to speed paint it and see how we get on. Thoughts on it now that I've painted the models and gone through them. In general, I'm not disappointed with the box set, but I have to admit that they're not really on par with what we would see in Warhammer, and I'll explain why. In relation to what we get, which is really good, we do get some fairly fine cast miniatures with a good level of detail. I don't want to say a high level of detail, there definitely is as a quality thing. There is some of that detail missing that we come to expect from some of the higher grades of models like we do from Warhammer. The actual plastic that it's cast in is really good. It's not too brittle, and it's also not too flexible. Primer goes down on it really well. I used a Vallejo primer via an airbrush for this, and it went on okay. And then generally that has helped pick out some of those highlighted points. When I looked at the actual cast models on their own without any primer on or Zenithal highlighting on, they don't look as detailed as they do once you've picked that out and brought that out with a Zenithal, and it definitely does bring out another level of detail, which is really, really cool. But as you go on to do the contrast paints, I would say that the general areas like the clothing is pretty good. The level of detail there is definitely significantly good enough that it's not a concern. But when it comes to the faces of the orcs, that's where that level of detail is lacking, and where other miniatures such as GW kind of take over from it. That said, for what I bought it for, I'm quite happy that it ticked a box for me. You have to consider quality-wise as well that you don't get multiple casts of the same model. What you actually get is one particular cast, and in the event of like the boar hunters or the bear hunters, you get them 4 times over. There is no differentiation between those casts. They are very much the same. Again, that goes very much against what you get from GW in relation to differences in sort of loadouts or an ability to even modify that. I mean, I don't discount that you could modify these, but they are single cast, so it's a lot harder to modify them than it is when you're putting together your own orc army, and you're getting that level of customization with Warhammer that you aren't getting here. And if that bothers you massively, then this won't be for you at that point. But having made some of the Ravaged Star stuff, having had a load of the GW stuff over the years, I would say that this sits at the lower end of cast miniatures in relation to what you get in a variety and the detail that you actually get. So that brings me on to value. Value-wise, I think for £50 for 20 miniatures, that value on its own is pretty good. I think the difficulty with this for me is I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, and therefore can't really give you an idea on whether this is worth it as an expansion to that just on its own. It is supposed to be a one-shot game. It is supposed to be something that you can effectively just play out of the box, but I haven't done that. I'm more interested in the miniatures. I'd be interested to see what people thought about that as a game and whether anybody else sort of plays that and whether they think that's any good. In relation to this review, I can't give you any information about that, and you should seek that elsewhere. In relation to miniatures and the way that they paint and make up, it's a really nice simplistic process. So for 50 quid, if you're entering into that realm and you're not sure whether you like miniatures, this is quite a nice little box set to get you down that road. Now, albeit you won't ever be able to play these at a GW store, if you ever went into a Games Workshop store and you actually played Warhammer, be aware of that. They only let you play Warhammer miniatures. You have to play the stuff that effectively they've given you. You can't use what are called proxies, which is where you switch out a particular GW model for a cheaper other mate model. Be aware of that, but it's not such a big deal when you're playing elsewhere, like places like Element Games or any kind of other game hall. As long as somebody else is happy that you're using that as a proxy and you're swapping it out, generally people accept that, and that's okay. But you need to know that there isn't a lot of use for this after either playing it in that box set or painting this up. I just liked the look of the models. I really was intrigued to see what the quality of these were like compared to GW, bearing in mind that a box set of I think a similar amount of orcs, around 19 or so, will be about 80 to £100 now. They've gone up massively in price. I remember the starter sets used to be 60 quid, and it was a really nice place to get into getting an army, whereas now they're considerably more. The special edition box sets used to be about £135, and I think they've escalated massively as well. It's a compound inflation effect that these things are all going up in monetary value, or in monetary cost, I should say, but it's trying to find that area where you get the value. I think this is good for people who are starting up and wanting to dip into the world of sort of painting. But you need to be aware you do need a lot more things that are in this box in order to get them to the point where I've got them to. So I'll show you the miniatures that I've painted. You know, I'm not professing to be the best painter in the world. I've used a system where we've used the contrast paints that came from AK. With the set for the orc colourings, you get 2 different types of green. You get a nice leather brown and a metallic silver.
I would describe the metallic silver as kind of a gunmetal feel to it. That goes on quite nicely. It doesn't go to the same level as, let's say, Lead Belcher Silver from GW. It is definitely a contrast paint, but it's got enough metallic fleck in it that actually it works quite well on its own in order to bring out some of the metallic parts. What it doesn't do is it doesn't contrast really well with what you've done with your Zenithal highlighting. So I would still suggest that it needs some more edge highlighting and bits and pieces over it. And in some areas of the models, I have done that and just picked out some little bits, specifically around armor and stuff on the actual Orc King that's in there. In relation to the leather, brilliant colour. The brown works really well. It works really well for Orc kind of leather where it's a bit dirty, a bit grimy. And I really enjoyed using that paint. Not much of an issue. Watered it down with medium a tiny bit. And it went on really nice, and it pigments really nice as well. Same for the greens. Both greens were really good. There is a distinctive difference between the two. One is slightly more yellow than the other, and you want to hit it with the more green one out of the two first, and then maybe bring up some highlights with the actual yellow one. It works quite well to actually build over a system of glazing it. And I used that with another yellow contrast paint from Army Painter, and it worked really well to give me a bit more depth to that kind of feel without the need to go through and highlight and bring any of your muscles out or do anything different with the orcs. And me personally, I'm quite pleased with how it looks. I think it's a fairly good tabletop standard. It's not Golden Demon winning. It won't get you to the point where everything's done. And I realised that and had to build on what I had from the AK pack with some of the other contrast paints that I've got. And that left me with quite a good set of models. In general though, the AK stuff, I was really pleased with it. And for £10.65, it works out about, obviously £2.50 a paint. I thought that was all right. I would certainly use the greens and the brown in ongoing projects and definitely pick that up again. In relation to the metallic, I probably just wouldn't use that because I'm more of a person who doesn't use contrast at that point and will build up the paint for metallics. I think it looks good enough for the tabletop, but I think you can definitely bring a lot more out of a model by painting it in Lead Belcher, bringing it back down with Nuln Oil, dry brushing it back up in Lead Belcher a little bit, bringing them highlights out, and then edge highlighting with something like a Mithril Silver or something similar, just to sort of pick it up and bring it out, and even maybe going over it again with one of the brown washes. So yeah, generally happy with it. These models are definitely detailed enough for you to be able to bring that kind of level of paint now. I think the only area that you'll be disappointed with is that area of the face. In general, the faces on these models are nowhere near as detailed as the GW versions of it. I would say that the body detail for a solid model where you're not adding any pieces on is a really good level, but it's the faces that are disappointing. And with the orcs, sometimes it's the faces that they pull which make them that little bit more unique, that makes them a better kind of model. The thing I love with orcs really is the endless kind of customization you get from the GW side. Your imagination can run wild as an orc collector, and it's just not quite the same with these models because they are fixed, because you can't really adapt them without having to do an awful lot of work to them. It's just not quite the same. So in conclusion, what I would say is this box set's definitely for somebody who is interested in D&D. It's definitely a good value set for somebody who wants some models to paint and maybe wants to try out some new techniques for painting but doesn't want to apply that to their GW models. I would certainly be happy to use these as test sample pieces in order to try and work out what kind of colour scheme I'd want to do for a further orc army, or whether I was actually interested in painting orcs anyway. It doesn't take that long to actually paint them. I've been struggling a little bit with what I've got on outside of painting and modelling at this point in time in order to get these kind of done. But the whole process of priming them, Zenithal highlighting, was quite quick. I would say it's about 20 minutes, I would say between 10 and 20 minutes per model, not horrendous. And then with that painting up system of using the contrast, the only thing you've got to watch with contrast is where you're heavily using contrast. You want to let it dry for a period of time and then come back to it. But if you cycle through your miniatures basically painting the same colour and going throughout, to be honest, by the time you get to the last miniature, you're going to be in that position where it's going to be dry anyway, or pretty much as close as you can to it. The key is not to go too mad with the contrast and not to go too heavy with it so that it requires severe drying. But yeah, really, really good. I enjoyed the process of doing these, But I think if I'm honest, I was disappointed in the level of detail in that specific area and the lack of variations within the specific models. So for example, having 4 of the bear riders looking exactly the same, except for the colour schemes that I've come up with in order to try and differentiate them a little bit. But other than that, quite good. Really, really liked the big orcs with the massive spikes on their backs and the big maces. They were very, very cool. So some good sculpts in here, but a bit of a problem on variation is what I would say. In all, I enjoyed it. For 50 quid, I didn't think it was horrendous based on today's GW prices. But what did you think? Have you guys built this one before? I know I'm a bit slow to the table with this because I think these have been around for quite a while now. Do you play the game? If you do play D&D and you play this as a little box set on its own, is it any good? I've never really been into playing the game. I really struggle with playing Warhammer in relation to having a couple of games. I never seem to be able to fit the time in to get that done. And when I do, I've normally learned something. But the next time I come to play, it's all gone out of my head again, unfortunately. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was useful to you in some sort of way. If you've got any questions, please do ask me down in the comments. I do get back to people down there. If you like the video, please do hit the thumbs up. It makes a massive difference to me. It tells YouTube that actually what I'm doing is okay and not just some AI guided nonsense. And if you like this kind of stuff, if you're into your hobbies, I'm into Gundam, I'm into Lego, I am into GW. You won't see loads of that on the channel yet, but I will be getting into that, I think, later in the year once the World Championships and stuff is out of the way for me for BMX and that. Subscribe. It costs you nothing, supports me massively. Really chuffed to be at about, we're just under 700 subscribers, I think now, which is brilliant. Really want to get to that 1,000, and you can be part of that. You can be part of the first 1,000 people. That'd be absolutely wicked. If you've got anything that you'd want me to review or you think I should be interested in, given you've watched some of my videos, please do write it down in the comments. I'll have a look at it. I've done that before. Had some great times building stuff that people recommended to me, so appreciate that. And just look after yourselves. Hopefully I will see you soon. Hopefully you are getting some modelling done and looking after yourselves. Just take care. See you on the next one.